University archivist and head of the West Florida History Center here at John C. Pace Library at the University of West Florida. And this series, An Hour in the Archives, is something that we started last fall, and the idea is to present some interesting programs um, about things related to West Florida and Pensacola history. And the talk that I'm doing today, That Man-Made Reached the Moon, the story of Pensacola's first space traveler, is something that I had in the collection for a long time, and I began doing research, and I finally ended up doing a conference paper on this topic. But the topic is just too cute not to share it, and so I'd like to start with that. On October 1st, hold on a second. Here we go. There we go. On October 1st, 1957, the Soviet Union launched the first artificial Earth satellite, Sputnik 1. It orbited the Earth every 96 minutes and broadcast a radio pulse until the batteries ran out 21 days later. It burned up on reentry on October 26, 1957. Now, the frightening thing about Sputnik 1, of course, is that this is in the middle of the Cold War between the Soviet Union and the United States. And so one of the fears was the first people in space could create some kind of space platform and launch atom bomb down on the U.S. and everything else. And we weren't quite on friendly terms with Nikita Khrushchev at the time. And so this was a kind of a frightening kind of thing. Now the U.S. Navy had decided that they were going to put the Naval Research Laboratory was going to launch a satellite. But what scared them was that the satellite that the United States had planned later in 1958-59 to send up weighed 3.5 pounds. Sputnik, however, weighed 183 pounds. And the difference between the two is a massive difference in what you need for a rocket and so forth. So one of the things that happened was that while we're debating about there's a great scene in the Right Stuff movie about everybody running down the hallway toward the presidential cabinet meeting, and they're all upset because the Russians have launched a satellite first. But the strange thing is, on November 3rd, 1957, the Soviets startled everyone again by launching Sputnik 2. This satellite weighed more and it carried a dog named Laika. And she became the first living passenger to survive being launched into orbit, to orbit the Earth. And it was reported at the time she died when the oxygen supply on the satellite ran out around day 6 of the mission. It was 40 years later that we learned that that was not true. She actually died probably a couple of hours after launch because the heat shield fell away from the satellite and it overheated. And the Soviet Union did not admit that until 1993. And so it was kind of really a startling thing. Laika was a stray mongrel from the streets of Moscow, and she was chosen, and the Russian space program chose dogs, and they took them from the streets of Moscow because they believed those dogs were could endure the extreme cold and hunger. Now, the American press called her Mutnik on the satellite. And this was the culmination. Her orbiting the Earth was the culmination of at least 12 space flights, ballistic flights that the Soviet Union had done since 1951, where they had launched 12 dogs into suborbital flight. So after this, there's a great deal of pressure on the United States and on the military to counter the Soviets and launch our own satellite. And the Air Force said that in early 1959 that they were working on the ability to monitor a cockpit environment during a launch. They hoped to be able to monitor the cockpit environment, temperature, pressure, altitude, cosmic radiation, acceleration profile, cabin air composition, as well as for the occupant of the capsule. They hope to monitor blood pressure, pulse rate, respiratory rate, oxygen rate, carbon dioxide, all the different kinds of things, and take pictures. And to achieve these goals, they plan to use a rhesus monkey in a completely self-contained capsule and send it up for 5 days. And the Army had a candidate, and they didn't give the monkeys, they didn't give their candidates pet names because they were afraid that animal activists would hear about this, and they didn't want to create problems. So they gave them names from the military phonetic book handbook. So the Army candidate was a monkey named Alpha. Now, and I just mentioned this, that they have both the Army and the Navy. Nobody's working together at this time. You've got the Army running something, you've got the Navy running something, you've got the Air Force doing some things as well. And they're all looking at the cockpit. Now, for the Navy in Pensacola, they purchased 25 squirrel monkeys at a pet shop in Miami and brought them to the United School of Aviation Medicine here in Pensacola, Florida. And here they underwent a whole series and batteries of tests. 14 monkeys entered long solitary confinement with electrodes all over their body, and one monkey stood out from the rest of the 14. And she was a pretty little monkey. She was intelligent. She was very sweet. She loved being handled by the staff. They nicknamed her TLC for tender loving care, and the Navy named her Baker. It's the next name in the phonetic alphabet. And so Baker, and she would eventually be known as Miss Baker, and she stood out in this testing. Now, the testing was, of course, state of the art, as you can see by the picture here, state of the art testing. And so inside the capsule, which in this case looks like a 22-gallon drum, they would test the monkey, and they would test them in various outfits. The idea being is if they were going to put a monkey in the satellite, they wanted to be able the monkey to be still. They wanted to be able to get these recordings of their feelings and things a little bit more carefully. And I have these pictures here of some of the monkeys. And again, we have state-of-the-art equipment here for testing and working on these. And so the Army is doing a rhesus monkey named Miss Abel, and the Navy is doing a little monkey named Miss Baker. And on May 28th, 1959, a Jupiter rocket lifted off from Cape Canaveral with Miss Baker and Miss Abel on board, and the Jupiter rocket took them to an altitude of 360 miles, what they consider suborbital orbital range, and down 1,700 miles downrange from the Cape. And this is a picture on the left of this one is Miss Baker in her little capsule that was aboard the satellite, and shows her side after she gets out of the capsule on the right side. Now, the flight lasted 16 minutes, including 9 minutes of weightlessness. Miss Baker and Miss Abel were also accompanied by samples of human blood, E. coli, onion, mustard, and corn seeds, yeast, and sea urchin eggs, and sperm. The reason for all this is we did not know what the effects would be in outer space on the human body. Whether there would be abnormalities, whether there would be diseases, whether there would be effects of cosmic range, all those kinds of things. And so the purpose was to send them up. And they were recovered by the USS Kiowa off of Antigua after they spotted the glowing nose cone fall to the sea about 3:45 a.m. in the morning and 250 miles southeast of San Juan, Puerto Rico. And I have a map here showing their thing. I will say that the Army had trained Miss Abel to press a key, like a telegraph key, every time a red light flashed. And they hoped to see it, if the monkey would be conscious and could do could do some kind of task in the capsule, in the spacecraft, but that equipment broke down before the flight, so they didn't get a chance to test that. After landing the nose cone in the water, it floated on the water and recovered by Navy frogmen about 25 minutes after splashdown. The ship reported that neither monkey showed any ill effects. They were flown to Andrews Air Force Base from San Juan, Puerto Rico. And this, of course, the Navy had to get pictures of the little monkeys, and they took them out of the capsule and took pictures of them here. Miss Abel is the larger monkey at the bottom, and Miss Baker from Pensacola is the little tiny monkey at the top. Now, they have electrodes attached to their bodies. When they got to Washington, they quickly held a press conference, and Donald Dalkin, who was head of our U.S. Navy School of Aviation Medicine here in Pensacola, showed the monkey to all the reporters and all. There was some jockeying as to who was going to take credit for the press conference, for the news conference, and it was finally agreed that NASA, which existed at the time, brand new, would take credit because they had paid $151,000 to the Army to fly them. Now, they were flown to Washington, and Miss Abel was taken to Walter Reed Army Hospital, Army monkey, and Miss Baker was taken to the Maryland Naval Medical Center for their post-flight checkups. And Miss Baker was described as the biggest damn ham in the world, and she happily posed for dozens of pictures. Both monkeys were described as uneasy during their plane flight, and Miss Baker wore a tiny jacket because she was sensitive to temperature. These two monkeys became the first animal to survive a press conference. At the news conference, data from the launch was reported as scientists were interested in the effects of the launch. Respiratory and heartbeat results were given for the monkey. Miss Baker, her normal heartbeat is in the range of 290 to 400. Pre-flight, it was 326, liftoff 340, and up to 348 in re-entry. These were very moderate changes, and it was hoped that these might also be indicative of what human beings would find in their launching. But NASA, at the press conference, made a big deal that this experiment, this monkey business experiment, was not related in any way to their man in the space program that they were doing called Project Mercury. Now, both monkeys were taken to their lab to have the electrode removed. Miss Abel, after checkup, was taken to the Army Medical Research Laboratory at Fort Knox, Kentucky. She was reported in good health, active, and happily eating. Each of the monkeys had had electrodes implanted in their body, and Miss Abel had 3 electrodes, one in her right shoulder, and the others were located above her left and right groin areas. The right one became infected, and the Army decided to remove it. During the operation, under light anesthetic, she developed cardiac fibrillation and died. She was autopsied to determine the cause of death, especially if it was related to the space flight, and she was also checked for radiation. The Army determined her death was not related at all to the space flight, but reaction to the anesthesia. After her death, she was stuffed and is on display today at the National Air Museum in Washington, D.C. Miss Baker returned to her home in Pensacola, but not before they had to get photographed and put on the cover of Life magazine. And you can see cute little Miss Baker, the 1 pound spider monkey, 1 pound monkey, calmly sucking her thumb in this picture. And she was returned to Pensacola, and she had her electrode removed, and the Army checked all of the things that had been sent with them, the eggs and the sperm and the sea urchin eggs and all that, and they said that they continued their cell reproduction with no problem whatsoever. And so, after appearance on the cover of the front cover of Life magazine, Miss Baker became known as America's first surviving animal from space travel. And as a result, because she lived here at the Naval School of Aviation Medicine at Pensacola NAF, they began to get bombarded requests for information, people wanting to see her. And the staff, the Naval school gave her presentation of the Pensacola Lion Club at San Carlos on June 26, 1959. They talked about the launch preparation. They displayed actual and model capsule. And at that time, Miss Baker was still kind of in quarantine. In late June of 1959, the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals announced it would be awarding a medal to Miss Baker and posthumously to Miss Abel in recognition of contribution by animals to humankind. William Rockefeller, AFPCA's national president, flew to Pensacola, and on June 29, 1959, a small medal and certificate of merit were presented to Miss Baker. It was reported that she tried to scamper away when the flashbulb began popping on the press cameras. Some news accounts noted that Miss Baker was now queen of the monkey colony at the Pensacola Naval Air Station. Rockefeller noted that it was the first time society had gone out of its way to recognize the value of scientific experiments and not condemn them. He also acknowledged the tender and kind attention of the scientists involved. In follow-up remarks, her doctors noted the next step would be determining how to survive the extreme condition and whether life could exist in such condition. And this is a picture of her wearing her little medal and the certificate of merit that she received. While she was in excellent condition and happy, it was revealed in August that she frequently chewed on her tail like a human baby sucking on their thumb, and it stopped once she got back to Pensacola with the other monkey. The Navy also gave her the Navy rating MS-1, standing for Monkey Space First Class. And she just became famous. A children's book was published about her. In fact, there's several more children's books. I don't have pictures of them all here about her. And there were articles that went out in the press wire all over the country about how she basked in the publicity. And people would write to her, and if you were lucky, the people at the base would send you her picture, which of course she signed with her little monkey paws. You can see on this picture, and it looks like this one's a really fancy. It looks like there's a piece of her, fur taped to this picture. So this was quite a special souvenir. In August of 1959, the Navy reported it was working to find a husband for Miss Baker, as well as build her a larger and new home. Their goal was to find out whether there might be any abnormalities in reproduction due to possible radiation exposure. The press, however, had a field day. They said they were building a new enclosure that they described as the honeymoon cottage. It would be 7 feet wide, 5 feet deep, 7.5 feet high, with formica wall and a ceiling, tile floor, special lighting, and air conditioning. She was moved to this room on September 22nd, 1959, and the room had a large viewing window so visitors and scientists could come by and observe her. And on the other wall, she had a picture which let the Florida sun in. The idea was to kind of acknowledge her by keep her quarantined from human germ. And although they had announced that at some point they wanted to find her a mate and produce some babies, everything was going along fine until November 9th of 1960, when Colonel Thurston T. Paul of the Army Missile Agency at Redstone, Alabama, announced that she was pregnant. And the following day in Washington, D.C., Admiral H.E. Rickover was discussing nuclear submarines and stated, "We can beat them, the Soviets, in two things. First, we have the only pregnant space monkey, and secondly, we have the only atomic submarine ever to run into a whale." And I had to do some digging but yes, the U.S. nuclear submarine collided with a whale off of New Hampshire and had to come back to port Didn't have to be towed, but it came back to port under its own power, but on the surface, for example. Despite these announcements, Miss Baker's obstetricians, if you call them, at NAF Pensacola, said she was not pregnant. There had been no attempts at pregnancy, and they planned to wait until March of 1963 when she figured she would be about 2, maybe 3 years old. And she continued to live a happy life at Pensacola NAF and was constantly visited by staff and visitors. And Pensacola reveled in being her home. November 1959, Pensacola area nurses held a 2-day institute at NAS, and of course, the highlight of their visit was visiting Miss Baker. The Pensacola Chamber of Commerce heard a slide program about the history of Pensacola. It was described as from the cliffs on Scenic Highway formed during the Ice Age to Miss Baker, the area's contribution to the space age. As 1960 began, her renown increased. December 1959 issue of Journal of Aviation Medicine was devoted almost entirely to her. News Journal reported that she got about 300 visitors a month. She has learned that grammar school kids up to about 11 years old are very interested in her and the whole subject of space travel. For another, she has discovered that high school students mostly don't have this interest and don't seem much interested in much of anything when they are taken through on tours. As for adults, she has observed that they are crazy about being lectured to by anybody who has a white mock or a PhD degree. She's been a little amused to discover that there are some people, type owners of male monkeys, who will write letters purporting to be from their monkey and proposing marriage to her. Pensacola NAF people said that she was retired from the space program because the public would be mad if she was sent up to space again. They would say that poor monkey has gone through so much already, she shouldn't be put in jeopardy again. In November 1960, the Associated Press said that she had had a baby, but her NAS obstetrician were quite surprised at that because that was not true. On May 30th, 1962, oh, by the way, this is the same period of time that the NAF Pensacola began training 7 astronauts in what is called Project Mercury here in Pensacola and in the space program. On May 30th, 1962, Tiny Miss Baker became the bride of Big John. The bride wore a beautiful tiny veil made by Mrs. Joseph Lynn, wife of Captain Joseph Lynn, commanding officer of Sausley Field. Big John wore a tiny top hat and bow tie, just as long as it took him to hurl the hat across the cage. The press reported the happy couple would share Miss Baker's quarters away from the other monkeys and would not be pestered by neighbors bothering them for a cup of nuts. Sadly, on October 3rd, 1962, Miss Baker gave birth to a 3-ounce stillborn male at NAF Pensacola. Effort to resuscitate the baby failed, but it was reported the baby showed no ill effects of its mother's space flight, and Miss Baker was reported in good condition and resting comfortably. The birth happened 75 minutes after Commander Walter M. Schirra, America's 5th astronaut to be orbited, was shot into space. Big John, who had been removed from Miss Baker's quarters a month before the baby was born, was reunited with Miss Baker on November 8, 1962, in an attempt to try again. In September 1963, Miss Baker and Big John were moved to Building 1811, Apartment 1, a large brick building at the base, as her original quarters were torn down for a new low-pressure chamber. By 1966, the Naval Aviation School of Medicine had over 200 monkeys undergoing various aspects of space research, but the most famous occupant continued to be Miss Baker. Miss Baker, as retired, lived a life of leisure, fed a carefully maintained diet, jello, eggs, monkey chow, fresh fruit, and water. And the official noted that no one knew what the lifespan of a monkey squirrel was. She spent her day playing on her trapeze, basking in the sun, watching visitors. She continued to get letters from school children, and her keeper noted they've had to copy her footprint a number of times. If irritated, she chatters rapidly, and her keeper noted the monkeys are fairly good biters, too. It got so busy at NAS that they actually proposed changing the sign over the gate to Home of the Blue Angel and Miss Baker. In June 1968, the Naval Air Space Center celebrated the 9th anniversary of her space flight. She received a morsel of cake. At the 10th anniversary in 1969, she threw the cake on the floor, demanding her special biscuits made of monkey chow and gelatin fortified egg, vitamin and mineral supplement. Vice Admiral Bernard Streen, Chief of Naval Air Training, said she had set a precedent as the first woman on record to take a flight with less than 40 pounds of luggage, and was one of the few women who never antagonized the driver or hollered about going too fast. Probably in connection with her achievements in space, Miss Baker continued to receive hundreds of letters a month from children all over the world asking for pictures, autographs, and the like. In 1971 marked a big change for her. In May, she celebrated the 12th anniversary of her spaceflight with peanuts, animal crackers, and sliced bananas. With the completion of the new Alabama Space and Rocket Museum in Huntsville, Alabama, Dr. Werner von Braun pressured the Navy and other officials to have Miss Baker transferred to a new home there. After inspection of the proposed facility by Navy doctors and veterinarians, Miss Baker left Pensacola on June 30th, 1971, along with her second husband, Big George. By all reports, she continued to thrive in Huntsville and get visitors and live happily. On a side note, Space Administrator James Fletcher fired the agency's top woman, NASA's top woman, Deputy Assistant Administrator Ruth Bates Harris, who ran the agency's Equal Opportunity Program. He became infuriated at her report, and she noted that their agency's affirmative action program was near failure. In one part of her report, she wrote, "There are no minority or female astronauts. There have been 3 females sent into space by NASA. 2 are Arabella and Anita, both spiders. The other is Miss Baker, a monkey." Miss Baker's second husband, Big George, died in January 1979, and in March 1979, Miss Baker wedded for the 3rd time to Norman, age 5, who had lived at the Yerk Primate Center in Atlanta. Madison County Judge Dan McCrory sealed the vows under the laws of monkey business, and since no one came forward to oppose the marriage, he declared the ceremony was completed. Although she never became pregnant again, she continued to live an active and happy life as an attraction at Huntsville. By 1981, she was getting 1,000 letters a week from school children, and she was 24 years old, which was estimated to be 104 in monkey years and at least double the average lifespan of squirrel monkeys in captivity. And she became quite a celebrity, and I did find a picture of her on the Dinah Shore show, where she's shown here with the Ed Buckby, director of the Alabama Space and Rocket Center, and with Sandy Duncan, John Biner, and Dinah Shore. In November 1984, and this is some of the things that she continued to appear on children's publication. This was a postcard that she could get at Huntsville. This is the picture of her in the enclosure, and it's kind of the sample letters that she would get every week from students and people who saw her. In November 1984, at age 27, it was reported that she was very sick with kidney failure, an ailment of old age. She died on November 29, 1984, at the small animal clinic at Auburn University School of Veterinary Medicine of respiratory complications due to kidney failure. Pensacola NAS staff noted that she could charm anybody with her nice disposition, and they were sorry that she had been moved from Pensacola to Huntsville. She was interred at the Alabama Space and Rocket Center with a memorial service on December 4th, 1984. Center director read tribute from Alan Shepard and John Glenn and noted that she was the smallest historic artifact from America's space program, but unquestionably the warmest and most affectionate. Her grave marker at the entrance to the Huntsville Museum reads Miss Baker, Squirrel Monkey, born 1957, died November 29, 1984. First U.S. animal to fly in space and return alive. The road to any great achievement always begins with small steps, and our race to the moon comes from our legacy of those who have gone before, especially that of Miss Baker, Pensacola's first astronaut and America's first space traveler to return alive from outer space. Thank you very much. Do you have any questions? I will say that one of the things that strikes me about this and strikes me about everything is the fact that I have one more slide. I'll show it. This man, 33 years old, Dr. Werner von Braun. He's the one who developed the V2 rockets for the Nazi rocket program. And we brought him to the United States in 1945 when he and 100 of his fellow members of the German rocket development team surrendered to U.S. troops on May 2nd, 1945. We brought him to White Sands, New Mexico. They continued testing and launching the V2s. He moved to Huntsville in 1952, became a U.S. citizen in 1955, and he was instrumental in helping us develop the Saturn. His crew developed the Saturn 1, 1B, and the Saturn 5 rockets, which we are still using today. And so it's just incredible to me that our space program sort of emerges from World War II, emerges from Nazi Germany. And Werner von Braun visited Pensacola many, many times. He and his rocket engineer were active down here at NAF Pensacola and other places. And it's just, to me, it's just an incredible line of history and those kind of things. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's presentation, and we'll try to do it again next month. Okay? Thank you all for coming.